spending 25 years on the street and being involved with politicians and understanding the whole Machiavellian ideology that we had on the street, I'm seeing this so pervasive in our government here in the United States.
You wrote a book about this, how, there are a lot of, I think, similarities between the mafia and democracy. I'm going up against the two-party system here, Michael. And BBC, the state-funded media organization, recently had a debate for mayor, and they invited two people for the debate, right? One of the two parties, even though I was clearly in second place. Again, if you can't learn about your candidate, then how do you have the right to vote, which means it's not a democracy? And they were literally not allowing me to go out and spread my message. So running for mayor is the last thing I wanted to do. When I told my wife this, she looked at me and said, why? London Real's never been bigger, business has never been better, and the world's never needed your voice more than ever. Why go do this thing where you're gonna be criticized, and it will be the hardest job I've ever had, let's be clear. And I just thought, I can't sit by and let this happen. I've got no donors. I've got nobody checking me. I just go for the best ideas that'll make the city I love win.
You're presenting the right ideas, and you're presenting what's going to be helpful to the people and to the city, then hey, you're the guy, and you are doing that.
There he is, Mr. Franzese. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm a little technically challenged, but we've got on, so that's good, Brian. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so great to see you here. And for people that don't know, this is Michael Franzese. You were on London Real about 8 months ago. Former mob boss of the Colombo crime family. Had some pretty crazy times back in the day, and then have really completely changed everything around. And now you're a real motivational speaker. You really go out and tell people about the life they should lead and not to lead. And just great to have you here, Michael. I really appreciate you. So thanks.
Well, it's good to be back, and I've been following you, Brian, and I'm real excited about what's going on your end. So it's great, really great.
Good, man, because I think it was right after our episode on London Real that I spoke to you off camera, and I said, Michael, I'm about to run to be the next mayor of London. And you were super supportive, and you said, great, Brian, let me know what I can do to help. And I just really appreciate that. And, 6 months later, we've been campaigning. We're out there on the road, and we're just changing the game of British politics. We're bringing a lot of, some of the Americanness to the race, and just going hard and showing people that we really care. And it's been an incredible ride. We're currently in second place right now. All the bookies have us as the only person who can beat the current mayor. And we got 3 weeks left. So it's exciting. I know you've analyzed the democratic process, so I'm glad you're here because I got some questions for you as well.
Well, let me tell you something. If I was a betting man, I'd bet on you. And I wish I can have you run for mayor of Orange County out here. We need somebody like you. That's for sure. But you're going to do a great job.
I'm not that crazy, I'm not crazy enough to come back to California, that's for sure. But it's funny because a lot of Londoners hear my accent and they're like, well, wait, what's going on here? And I remind them that I've lived here 21 years. I became a citizen of Britain in 2007. My two boys were born here. And I kind of bleed this city. I love it. I plan on being buried here. So, for me, I just had to do this because I couldn't watch these politicians run the city I love into the ground. And I thought, look, if I don't do it, nobody else will. And based on where we are in the odds makers, I'm glad I did do something. Otherwise, this guy would be reelected easily. So it's been a real eye-opening process, Michael. And I'd like to get some of your thoughts on this because you wrote a book about this, how, there were a lot of, I think, similarities between the mafia and democracy. I'm going up against the two-party system here, Michael. And BBC, the state-funded media organization, recently had a debate for mayor, and they invited two people for the debate, right? One of the two parties, even though I was clearly in second place. And wow. It's frustrating to see how this two-party stranglehold is almost baked into the DNA, and everyone kind of follows this pattern. They give you an illusion of choice every 4 years, but it's kind of business as usual behind the scenes. And I'm trying to just break all that up. But what are some of your thoughts on the whole process? I'm really curious.
Well, there's no doubt. I am writing a book. It's almost completed. It'll be released this summer, and it's called Mafia Democracy. And basically, Brian, spending 25 years on the street and being involved with politicians and understanding the whole Machiavellian ideology that we had on the street, I'm seeing this so pervasive in our government here in the United States. I mean, and I'm going to point this out in specifics and in details. And this is not a fluff book. I'm not going after, one party or the other. I'm just cutting right down the middle. And basically, it's all about the people holding our politicians accountable to do what they say they're going to do and act in the benefit of the people, not for themselves. And that's what I see here. And I know you, and I know you're the guy to straighten it out in London, because you need a voice for the people in office. That's what it's all about. And boy, it would be very refreshing, Brian. I know you got a tough road because the system is rigged. There's no doubt about it, no doubt about it. So you got a tough battle, but I think if you get there, you're going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I leave that to my other guests on London Real, but I do know that, there's no motivation to innovate when there's a two-party system. There's no reason for them to go way out in left field and try new ideas. Michael, someone stopped me on the street the other day and they said, "You're the Elon Musk of British politics." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "You're coming out with these really big ideas. You're going to change the game. The two big automakers are going to try to force you out. But guess what happened now? Now they're making electric cars." So it's like it always takes an outsider to change the game. There's a book called The Innovator's Dilemma that always says that it's the big established brands will never, take the chances to try the new ideas or tell the truth. It takes a small guy, an independent voice, to change it. But then the game changes and then it evolves. So I kind of see what you're talking about. It's kind of baked in. And here in Britain, some of these parties have been around for hundreds of years, and they have, tens of millions of pounds of financing by corporations. They have who knows what the backroom deals are, all the members of politics around the country. And then I come along. I've got no donors. I've got nobody checking me. I've got no party except we created our own party. I just go for the best ideas that'll make the city I love win. And I don't think anyone's ready for that, even though that sounds obvious, right?
Well, you never know, but you're right. A lot of these people in office in the two-party system, they put on a good front and a good act in front of the people, and then they go in the back room. And I know, Brian, I've been there. Trust me when I tell you, I've been there. Go in the back room. Yeah. And, it's all about not upsetting the apple cart, not upsetting what they got, because so many of these people are in office for themselves, to enrich themselves. If you look at our Congress here, so many of these people go in as blue-collar people and come out as millionaires on a $180,000 salary. How do you figure that? So they don't want an outsider, coming in and upsetting things like that. And, I just hope you I got a big following in the UK and a lot of people in London. Boy, and I'm pushing. I'm going to continue to push and push and push, and tell them you're the guy.
I really appreciate that. The game changer for us, Michael, is that I've had these digital networks. So I've been, on YouTube for 10 years. When I started this race, we calculated 1.7 million Londoners already knew who I was out of 9 million. So, and I've been streaming digitally every single day. So I did an hour and 20-minute live stream from the back of our battle bus today while I was driving through the streets of London, taking live questions from people, talking about our manifesto, which is this 50-page document I put together that is basically a blueprint to solve all of London's problems. I mean, we spent 8 months working on this. So I don't think anyone's used to a politician, first of all, being on their social platforms. Most politicians aren't even on Instagram, where the young people are, and most people they're not this transparent. So this is the thing we have going for us, is that we can go connect people. I can sometimes bypass the gatekeepers, Michael, which are the two-party system, the newspapers, sometimes the television networks, and we can go straight to the people, to Instagram, YouTube. And so there's going to come a time where the gatekeepers, they can't do it anymore. There's going to come a time, because of digitization, where you can go straight to the people. And we're right on the edge of that right now, it feels.
Yeah, no, I think that's happening. The danger in that is, when you in the United States here, where the two-party system, or at least one party for sure, is controlling, even now big tech in a way. And that's what you got to watch out for. Hopefully that doesn't happen over there in London and the UK, but it's happening here big time. You say the wrong thing, you're shut down. It's terrible. It really is.
We spent the last year fighting for freedom of speech here. I call it digital freedom of speech, because I went head to head with YouTube which is owned by Google, which is owned by Alphabet, one of the biggest companies in the world. And, for 9 years, I had been broadcasting live conversations from my studio. And I never had a single problem until one day last year, they decided to pull the plug on me. And all of a sudden you see who's really in charge. And the tech companies are sometimes more powerful than the governments themselves. And they'll shut you down too. So you're right. It's a real issue. You see it happening. They have their own political ideas themselves as companies, and they push those narratives, whether it's conscious or subconsciously, but they do it either way. Whether they know they're doing it or not, they kind of project their ideas, politics, ideals onto the networks that are supposed to be utilities, right? I made this comparison with someone else. If you were on the phone with someone back in the 80s, you would never expect someone to say, you can't say that on the phone call with someone else, because that was a utility. It was a private connection. But now, if you're on Instagram, they say, Michael, you can't say that, and we're going to take your post down. And it's like, well, that's not a utility anymore. It's like it's almost an agenda. I always say Google's not a search engine. It's an agenda engine. And you got to be careful with what's out there. So it's real.
No doubt, Brian. And once they control our speech, man, we're in trouble, a lot of trouble, because that's what we have going for us. That's what a democracy, a republic is all about. Freedom of speech, freedom of ideas. And once they start controlling that, people will one day realize it. Unfortunately, they don't at this point. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. And I think they're winning, at least for the time being. They're winning here in the States, and I hope it's not the same way, where you are.
Yeah, it's dangerous to see. I think it's usually it comes here about 3 to 5 years after it happens there, so it moves around the globe slowly. But yeah, it's scary to see. I think, Michael, what happens is that people had their freedoms for so long that they forgot how valuable they were. We fought for them a couple hundred years ago and fought for independence. We fought over the years for all these basic freedoms, and then we got used to them. And then when they take a few of them away, and you give someone a subsidy check, right? Or you give someone a cool digital platform, then they let it slide, and then they let it slide. And then at some point you realize, wait a second, I can't express myself. And then things probably go bad quickly.
No, you hit it on the head, Brian. It's exactly how it happens. And that's how they control. They give you a little money, they give you, subsidies and so on and so forth, and you're comfortable for a minute, and then you realize before you turn around, hey, what happened? I can't speak anymore. My freedoms are gone, then it's too late.
Yeah, I had a guest on London Real a few years ago, and he was born in Russia, grew up in Canada, and he's in London. He actually just left London because he was getting tired of the lockdowns. And he said, Brian, this reminds me of the Soviet Union. You give people enough, a little subsidy, a little something, you take away their freedoms, but you give them something else to make them happy. And he said, I can't believe I'm watching it happen in a quote unquote democracy in the West, right in front of my eyes. And again, he's got the perspective of living in that, Soviet type atmosphere. Unfortunately, a lot of Brits and a lot of Americans, we've never seen that side of it, so we haven't experienced that where you literally can't say something, or you might go to jail, or you might disappear. So it's something we have to constantly talk about. That's for sure.
Well, you're right. Just continue that narrative because it's the correct one. And, hopefully a lot of people are paying attention. When is the election?
So it's 3 weeks from today. It's on May 6th. And it's, like I said, it's really down to us and the current mayor. It's been fascinating to watch. He's a very, very good politician. He's been doing this for 18 years. I always joke that I don't think he could get a job in the private sector. He's never run a business in his life. And so it's kind of fascinating to think that he's going to be the guy to get us out of the worst recession in 300 years. And I keep reminding people, London was built on business. The Romans came here a couple thousand years ago, not because of the view. They came here because it was a place of commerce, and our great culture, our great fashion, our great music came out of the fact that people came here to do business. And I just see someone at the helm that doesn't seem to have a plan to rebuild things. And also, this city's falling apart. I mean, knife crime is a big thing here, Michael. It's hard for people to believe, but teenagers, they get stabbed on the streets all the time. And our transport networks are going bankrupt, and there's no housing in this city. And it's amazing. 5 years later, it's gotten worse. But I must say, the man is good at a photo op, and he's good at staying away from people. I've been told by his own party he's not allowed to go out in public until the election. because when he goes out, people literally yell at him. They run down the street, and he has to kind of run and hide when they come out. And so it's this weird thing where I'm out there on the streets. I got pulled over by the police about 3 months ago. I got surrounded by 10 police officers in 5 vans, and they grabbed me and my crew, and they detained us, they fined us, and they banned me from campaigning, actually. And they said I was breaking the COVID protocols, and I was literally alone in the middle of the street talking to my phone.
Wow.
And I said, actually, we're following the same protocols that are being used for a television production right down the street. And I said, this feels political to me. And we actually taped the whole thing. It went viral. And the police were like, this isn't political. And they got very loud. And again, the police have a hard job, but they were stuck between some weird political agendas. And so it's been an interesting time. And I actually joked, kind of not joked, that we should have the UN here, you know, the guys in the white helmets, to make sure we had free and fair elections. Because, again, if you can't learn about your candidate, then how do you have the right to vote, which means it's not a democracy? And they were literally not allowing me to go out and spread my message. So it's interesting times, to say the least.
Well, you know, you just hit on something that always amazes me. You have a guy that's a career politician that never ran a business, never had to make a payroll, never had to repay a loan or try to get financing for a company, never had to worry about customers. And all of a sudden, he's going to solve, you know, the biggest issues financially, economically in a major country. From what? What experience? Brian, you know, and I know, you know, business is tough. You don't just walk in and say, okay, I'm going to solve all the problems. You don't have a clue. And, you know, I tell people that all the time. We have the same thing here in the States. We have a president that's been, you know, in office for 47 years. He's never ran a business. You know anything about it. How are you going to solve the biggest economic problem of our times? It makes no sense. And I don't understand how people rationalize. But you know what they do? Oh, let's give them a subsidy check. Let's, you know, give them a stimulus check. We'll do that. Keep people happy. Keep them quiet. And we can do whatever we need to do. Man, and I hope you break that cycle there. I really do it, Brian.
It's really refreshing talking to you, Michael. So, by the way, thank you. This is like therapy for me because I'm on the road usually campaigning all day. But, you know, it's so true what you said. First of all, on those subsidies, people don't realize it's the lower income people that pay for those over time because of increased taxes. So you think you're getting a free check from the government. It's actually the hard-working American or British person here that actually pays for that in the long run through inflation, through taxation. And again, amen to what you said. The mayor of London has a budget of 18 billion pounds. It's really 18 billion pounds is the budget. And he has never run a business in his life. He's bankrupted our transport system twice this last year, and he asked the national government for bailouts. So what they do is when they fail, they increase taxes and they ask for bailouts. Now, you and I were both in business. You know, I was there for 30 years. You were for probably something close to that. And we know, first of all, you have to hold people accountable, and you have to make the payroll, and you have to make sure you don't go out of business or you lose everything, all of your hard work. It could be 10 years. It could be your own savings. It could be your reputation. So you fight tooth and nail to find solutions, to find innovations to problems. Whereas we see civil servants, they kind of throw their hands up and say, oops, we need to borrow some more money. Exactly. We need to tax you. We just screwed up again. We're sorry. And it's like, you can't say you're sorry in the business world. Nobody wants to hear that, right?
Well, they don't feel the pain, Brian. That's it.
That's it.
You know, print some more money. We'll tax people. We'll do it slowly. We'll do it quietly. We'll make them believe we're taxing the rich. They don't realize it's really on the rich can afford it. It's really on the backs of the blue collar workers and the ordinary people. And, you know, so many people I've learned over the years, especially through social media, that so many people are uninformed and uneducated. And that's not a knock on them. You know, they're living their lives. They're trying to do the right thing, support their families, do a job. And they just don't get into it enough to be informed as to what's going on. And that's why when somebody like yourself is out there in the streets, pounding it away and telling them the truth, you just pray that they listen. Really.
Yeah, and people are listening too. You know, I think that the current politicians of today and the current mayor of London, he thinks people are stupid. And guess what? They're not. We found this with long form content. I mean, you're a master. I love watching your YouTube videos, Michael. I love all the content you produce. I love your interviews. And, you know, people can grasp a nuanced conversation. They can grasp nuanced ideas. And the public is quite smart. And so I got people coming up on the street, whether they're a taxi driver, a bus driver, a nurse, even I got teenagers coming up and saying, hey, I watched your videos. I saw your policies. I see what you're doing with housing. I see what you're doing with transport. And you're like, man, and they're like, I used to hate politics. I didn't like those guys, but now I can see how it affects me. So I think we're coming to a level where people are getting educated more, just because of the media that's out there. So I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic.
Well, listen, you just keep fighting. You know, you got 3 weeks, and I'm gonna start blasting it, Brian, because I believe in you. I mean it. And listen, I know about corruption. You know, that was a life 25 years ago I was very familiar with, and I know an honest guy when I see one too. So
I mean, like, again, you know, some people know a little bit about you, Michael. Some people don't know as much, but like, you did get to see a lot of aspects of government, you know, for good or bad. You got to kind of see what's happening, because I remember when you were here, we talked about a lot of the businesses that you ran. And I think I mentioned to you, you know, there's only one entity in the world that could let hundreds of millions of dollars go missing. That's like the federal government, where there's no accountability. That wouldn't happen at Tesla or General Motors or anything else. And again, you also saw how politicians kind of, you know, stay in office and keep there. I mean, you have a lot of great knowledge. What perspective can you give us about how government works, or how we can break the cycle as voters and citizens?
Well, again, you know, what fascinates me here in the United States is that so many politicians, and today it's amazing, because politicians are just untruthful. They lie, they exaggerate. You know, here we have the Washington Post giving politicians 4 Pinocchios, meaning that everything they said was an absolute lie. And people just say, well, that's politics. Now, if that was your brother, your sister, your mother, your best friend, your business partner, you wouldn't accept it. But these are the people that are in control of our lives, and we're saying, that's just politics. But they don't understand what that transponds to. It's your life, it's your livelihood, it's your freedom. So that's what gets me, Brian. And politicians today, so many of them are just so dishonest, and we don't hold them accountable. And that's why I hope the people of London see through what's going on, you know, with the current administration, and they hold them accountable. And it's like anything else, you know, if they're not doing the job, you fire them, you get rid of them, throw them out, and bring somebody in there that's going to work. That's the way you do it. That's the democratic system.
It is. I keep telling people that they can fire our current mayor, Sadiq Khan, on May 6th if they go and vote. And that's their chance. That's the chance to hold them accountable. And you're right. You know, the more I learn about politics, Michael, I got to be honest with you. I didn't know much about it 9 months ago. And I'm honest with people. I didn't vote in the last mayoral election 5 years ago because I just didn't care. And nobody was engaging with me. And so, again, I'm trying to make sure more people care. But the more I learn about politics, the more it makes me sick. I find people that are in this as a career. And what happens right now in London, Michael, is that the current mayor is of the Labour Party, which is more like the Democrats. The prime minister, which is more like the president of the country, is in the Conservatives, which is like the Republicans. So they argue back and forth, right? We saw this happen, I think, last year in American politics, where like a governor would argue with the president. And they go back and forth and blame each other. And then the citizens watch, and then they pay for it the whole time. So it's like, it's his fault, it's his fault, it's his fault, it's his fault.
Exactly.
And then every 4 years they switch places, and then they switch places. And then when you look over 30 years, nothing's really changed. They've both been paid by the public, and Lord knows what else they're doing in the background. And it's like, okay. Meanwhile, you know, teenagers are dying in the streets. You know, people are running, their businesses are going bankrupt here. And there are real implications. So, you know, people, honestly, Michael, they don't know what to make of me. I got the American accent. I'm wearing the English suits. I'm paying for this campaign myself. I've put up outdoor billboards that no mayor has ever done. I got a bus driving around. I got digital ads going places. People are like, what's going on here? But I'm like, look, one thing I can tell you for sure is that running for mayor is the last thing I wanted to do. When I told my wife this, she looked at me and said, why? London Real's never been bigger, business has never been better, and the world's never needed your voice more than ever. Why go do this thing where you're going to be criticized, and it will be the hardest job I've ever had, let's be clear. And I just thought, you know, I can't sit by and let this happen. So I'm going all in on it, and my team's been all in. I get really obsessed with stuff, as you might have noticed, Michael. So I just went crazy learning everything about this city. And a few days ago, we dropped this thing I was showing you. It's like 50 pages. It's called a manifesto, and it's got detailed policy down to how I'm going to pay for 10,000 more officers on the street. And I think it's shocked people. because some of the other parties drop manifestos and they're like 13 pages. And it's just like, well, that doesn't solve the problem. So I think people are starting to think maybe there's something here. And then they've known me from London Real for 10 years. So we feel like this is a pivotal point. We had some cool newspaper coverage, 2-page spreads, and some of the big papers like the Evening Standard and the Times. So I feel like we're winning the war, but we're also going up against a juggernaut. That is for sure. And a lot of people are conditioned, to vote for these parties. It's almost like families, Michael. I was thinking they're like families, the parties. Mm-hmm. And, the family is a group of individuals that act in a common interest, I think. And I'm going up against a family that's been around for 100 years. Maybe it's not as powerful as the Gambino family. Maybe it's more powerful than the Gambino family. I don't know. But I can see how you're going up against an organization of individuals, which is stronger than one person. And to break that, your ideas have to be 10 times better, I think. And so that's
I can tell you, trust me, government is more powerful than whatever power we had on the street. I can tell you that, Brian, because they can manipulate a lot better than we can. They create the laws, they create the agendas. But, my advice to you over the next 3 weeks, don't sleep. Get out, let people hear you, let them hear your ideas. I would love to see that manifesto. I really would. I'd be really interested in that. So maybe I can get a copy somehow.
Yeah. I'll send you a copy. It's also on our website, brianfromare.london/manifesto. But yeah, I'll get you a copy for sure. It's something we're really proud of. And I think it's something that shows we're a little different than the rest. Tell me, Michael, why did you write this book about democracy? And would you ever run for office? I know I saw recently you got jury duty, so you can vote now, which is a big deal, right? Because as a convicted criminal, that's not always given, but you have that, right?
Yeah, I've gained that authority back now. I can vote. I am a good citizen. It's been 25 years since I had any trouble. But, Brian, I had a group that was trying to get me to run for a mayor in Las Vegas. And, and you know what? You almost feel a responsibility to do things. But I said, with my background, these people are going to drag it. They'll make it seem like whatever I did 30 years ago happened yesterday, right. So why do that? But, I'll tell you a quick story on the book. After I wrote my business book, this was 6 years ago, my publisher came to me and they said, we want you to do a political book. And I said, well, I'm really interested in politics. I really, because I'm concerned about, my country and my children and my grandchildren more than myself. What is our country going to look like in 10, 15 years? Yeah. So, but then I started writing the book, Brian. And I called it a Mafia Democracy, trying to show the analogy, the Machiavellian system, the way it's being instituted here in the States. And I said to myself, what do I need this for? These people are going to get upset with me. They're going to come after me. I lead a nice, quiet life now. And I went to my publisher. I gave him back my advance, and I said, I'm not writing the book. I don't need it. Wow. That was 5 years ago. And in the last 7 months, I said, you know what? That's wrong. I have a responsibility. I want people to understand what's going on in America, and I want them to hold their politicians accountable. That's it. Don't allow them to lie. Don't allow the backdoor deals. Don't allow them to do all of these things that affect you, your livelihood, your family, your way of life. So I felt an obligation, and I went back and I said, I'm writing a book. And people are going to be, again, what's the goal? The goal is to open people's eyes, to make them understand. And I don't think there's a better time here and where you are to let people understand. They see what's going on. And I think if they hear it enough, Brian, and you're a likable guy and you're going to do what you say you're going to do, I think that you may surprise a lot of people come May 6th. I mean it.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Michael. And you're right. When I think about my children and my grandchildren, and again, like what's left when we're gone? What's left is, did you do something important? Were you of service? Did you make the world a little bit of a better of a place? And, I know what I like about you, Michael, is that you tell the stories from the mafia, but they always end with a lesson. That's what makes you different, I think, than so many people. It always ends with and guess what? This is not the thing to do. If you go down this road, it ends in tears, it ends in death, it ends in poverty, it ends in jail, or you can choose to do something correct and something that's in the interest of a lot of people, and it is the right thing. And I think that's a powerful message for people. And I agree. I think in the last year, with all the craziness we saw and the lockdown, we saw for a second maybe the way things really are briefly. And this is the time to get people to like notice it and hold them to task and hold them accountable. And if people don't take action, though, it probably could get worse from here. And as things go more digital and that becomes out of control, it gets a little bit trickier. And so we could be in some tough situations. So I'm glad you decided to write the book. You know, you have to be a little altruistic to do these things, I think.
Yeah. You know, my wife said, "You sure you want to do this?" And I said, I feel an obligation. You know, sometimes you just can't sit on the sidelines. You know, you just can't. And, you know, I'll be 70 years old this year. What do I got to, what do I got to worry about, Brian? Right. I live my life and, you know, I'm going to try to make that contribution. But, you know, you're right there. You know, I tell people, I lived that lifestyle and, you know, I had some success, but it's a dead end street. And, you know, I've seen too many people go down that road and just families collapse, their lives collapse. You know, I go into prisons all the time. I speak to guys, you know, this is what's so sad. They're 45, 50 years old. They've done 10, 15 years in prison, lost their families. And they look at me and they say, "Mike, where do I go from here? You know, I get out in 3 years. I'm going to be 55 years old." What they don't realize is when you do these things, you put so much baggage on your back to carry around. And you know, Brian, life is tough enough when everything was good. You know, we had a pandemic last year that came out of nowhere. You know, good people got hurt so bad in this country, and I'm sure they're all over the world. You don't know what's going to happen in life. And when you make wrong choices and the consequences could be so severe, you got to do the right thing in life, you know, and we need good leaders. We need good leaders. You know, here in the United States, we're so divisive now in this country. And people say to me, "Michael, why?" I said, very simple. It starts from the top. When we see these people arguing, calling each other names, getting down in the gutter, it starts from the top. They set the tone. And then it goes down and it trickles into to society. And that's what happened here in the United States. Every fault that's going on here in this country, and I'm sure it's from the angry and divisive rhetoric that starts at the top.
It's so true. And, you know, I spent the last 10 years on London Real where I put people in the chair who I don't agree with, and I allow them to tell their story for 2 or 3 hours. And I try to, you know, that old saying, you know, walk a mile in a man's shoes and you'll understand them. And so, you know, I need to bring this city together because London, as most cities, are full of actually good people that want the best thing for their children, for their communities. If they have a leader that can kind of show them the way and say, let's work together for these ends. But if the leader is fueled on this divisiveness, like you said, if they win when they divide and create team A versus team B, we go into this vicious cycle, which I think we're seeing in the States, and I don't want to see this here. So, yeah, I've always told people when I become mayor, I want to work with both parties. I want the best idea to win. And maybe I'm being naive, and maybe I'm being, too optimistic. But that's how I live. And I'm just thinking, you know what? We bring everybody together. We want to show we're the best city in the world. Londoners are looking for that. I think we need that kind of positivity, if that makes sense, that maybe doesn't exist in politics. Maybe if you've been there for 20 years, maybe it's been beaten out of you. I don't know, but I know we'll bring it back, Michael.
Well, you're right, you know, and I tell them all the time, you guys got a problem with each other, you know, do it like we used to do it on the street. You know, we weren't allowed to disrespect one another. We weren't allowed to call each other names. We had to be respectful when we sat down, you know, and I tell them, you guys got a problem, go in the back room and talk about it. But in front of the public, you know, show them that you want to bring us all together. That's what this is all about. We're one nation, one country, the same in your city there. You know, all this harmful, divisive rhetoric does nothing but tear people apart. I'm going to tell you this. I'm afraid we're going to have a revolution here in the United States. I really mean that. Because, you know, there's certain freedoms that they're starting to try to really take away that I know some people are not going to stand for. And I'm worried about that, Brian. I really mean it. You know, they're starting to trample on our Constitution here in ways that people are getting very, very upset. And I hope it's not the same where you are. And that's why we need a leader that can say, let's stop, you know, let's take a breath. Let's put this thing back together.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is it doesn't cause clickbait when you want to talk about positive answers and coming together. And but that's exactly what we need. And I'm watching things in America. It looks dicey. I mean, I used to live in New York City. I know you spent some time there as well. And I grew up in California. I wouldn't live in either city now if I moved back. And I see now certain states doing certain things. And I see people moving to different states just because they want their human rights. And I never would have expected that to happen in America. And now it's happening. And then you've got people that actually are ready to dig in and fight for their human rights there. And so it's kind of scary to watch. That hasn't happened here yet. And I'd like to prevent that from happening and try to get everybody on the same side. You know, these digital networks can also be used to bring us together. That's the crazy thing. You know, if you have these conversations with people that realize, wow, that person isn't what I thought they were. I actually understand them now. They can be used positively as well. So yeah, we've got to go that way. And
I got to tell you, you need to prevent what's going on in the United States. You wouldn't recognize San Francisco, LA, New York, Portland, Seattle. These places are they're danger zones. Literally danger zones. You can't walk the streets in some of these places. I mean, it's terrible. I avoid going into LA. My daughter, I won't let her go to dance class anymore unless, we go with her. I mean, it's gotten that bad in the United States. And it's getting worse. And people are empowered. They feel like they have a right to do it now. You know, the homeless situation, totally out of control here. I mean, it's terrible what's going on. And boy, I'm telling you, if people are smart, you're the guy that prevent that. You don't want to see what's going on in your city, what's going on here in the United States. You do not. Trust me.
I know in the United States of America, you're describing, this sounds like a bad science fiction movie, like Escape from New York. It sounds like one of those movies. It sounds like New York City in the 80s when it was actually dangerous.
Exactly. And Brian, I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you straight out the way it is. You know, the media sometimes try to hide it because it's bad for their candidate, but it's reality. I know people in every one of those cities. I have family in New York. My daughter moved out of Manhattan. She said, Dad, I can't stay there anymore. She moved out to Long Island. She was afraid to take my little granddaughter out. It's gotten that bad. People are being attacked in the street. And I know this is not popular, and people say it's the truth, Brian. I have no reason to exaggerate. You know, I've got family and people that I care about, and I want to make sure that they can walk the street safely. And now they're trying to abolish police all over I don't understand that. And this is from a former mob guy who says, no, you need the police. Trust me. You need the police.
I almost said, because I moved to New York City when Giuliani was there. I moved in '93, and I saw how the city just, completely changed because they took a hard tack. And I know Giuliani was one of the guys that put you away. And yet you're saying, and I talk to people on the streets now about more police, and they're like, oh, I don't know about that. But it's funny how we're seeing people start to realize that police are important, law and order is important. And you've seen both sides of that coin.
Oh, absolutely. Look, Giuliani was once my enemy. He tried to put me in jail for 50 years. But people asked me about him. I said, hey, look, I'm going to be honest. I said, he did an amazing, wonderful job in New York City. He cleaned it up. We need law and order in this country. We got to have it. And who's going to enforce it? Police. Okay, if they need better training or they need, some kind of reform, we get it. You need that in every walk of life. So do the job and let them do their job properly. We must have law and order.
Yeah. And look, it's a great example you're making, Michael. London needs to pay attention because we could turn into that if we're not careful. And like I said, we're usually a few years behind. One of the things I talk to people on the streets today about is I talk to them about more officers on the street. So I want to put 10,000 more officers on the street, and I found a way to pay for it. You tell the kids that, and they say, wait a second, these officers are, they stop and search us, they disrespect us. And I go back to the police, and I've been able to have conversations with high-level police officers in the Met Police, people in the House of Lords and Parliament, people behind the scenes in transport. And I go back and say, this is what they're saying. And they're like, yeah, Brian, because we don't have the officers, we don't have enough officers, we can't train them properly. And he said, that's why. If we could train them in the community, we could be more respectful. So then I go back to the community. I said, look, these aren't bad people, but they don't have the resources to make sure they can do things in a proper way. And they say, okay, fine. And then also we need money for our community centers. So I'm like, I'm going to get that from the corporates and get them to invest, the Ubers, the Amazons, the HSBC, the Barclays, to put money right into those community centers to help the kids. I said, if we do this two ways, we can have law and order and respect and options for our teenagers besides going into gang crime and knife crime. And so people are starting to like, okay, we see how this works. But, if you just go in and say more police, everyone freaks out. If you say less police, everyone freaks out. But there's some fine line there. If you can actually explain it and have a conversation with people where people are like, okay, I can see where you're going. And so Look, this is a great conversation, Michael, because I'm going to take this and I'm going to try to remind Londoners, look, right now we have something that hasn't degraded and we don't want it to go that way. So let's make sure we don't run away from policing, but we also hold the police accountable and we give our young kids something else to do besides go into the gangs and crime. Because thanks to people like Michael Franzese, they can see that leads to nowhere, short-term gains, long-term pain. So I guess it's one of my jobs to educate them. And honestly, this has been the hardest thing I've ever done, Michael. But I couldn't not do it. That's what I told my wife. I can't not do this. So I feel like I have to. I've been a lot of criticism, but it's also been amazing. People on the streets coming up and saying, we support you. We appreciate you. And so it's been a crazy adventure. So, I appreciate your insights. I want to know how you look so great at 70, Michael. That's what I want to know.
I don't know, Brian. Well, my dad, passed away at 103. So we got some good genes in the family, that's for sure. But, I want to tell you, remember this, Brian, if you're not being criticized, you're not doing your job. So don't worry about the criticism. You do what you know it's right. And enough people are listening, that'll carry the day. But, I learned that a long time ago because you're not going to please everybody. Other people have a different agenda. They're not going to listen to what you say. But, the masses will. You get your point across. You're a likable guy. You present yourself well and you're real and you're honest. And that's what matters. And you're fighting for the right things for the people. What else do you need this for? That's what it's all about. And, people ask me, I don't want to get too political here, but people ask me, why did you vote for Trump? And I said, look, let me tell you something. To me, it's not a personality contest. I vote for who I feel has the best agenda for my country, for my children and grandchildren, so that they can live a proper life the way they were meant to be. I said, I don't invite him over for dinner. He's not going to take my daughter out. We're not going to go golfing together. But his agenda is right for America. So and that's what people should be concerned with. That's it. Look, I'm a conservative, but if the Democrats propose something that I think is great, I'll accept it. This is not a battle of that thing for me. We'll accept it. So if you're presenting the right ideas and you're presenting what's going to be helpful to the people and to the city, then, hey, you're the guy and you are doing that.
Yeah. Great words, Michael. And one of the things I say every day to myself is, criticism is a sign of success. I want more. That's right. That's what I say because, and one thing I always fault our current mayor is he never seems to make a stand on anything. Everything is said to kind of be correct in the moment. And then what happens is nothing happens. So you're going to have to make a stand. They say great art divides. And we know that now. So I'm coming out, I'm putting these ideas out there. Not everyone agrees with me, but at least they can see ideas that they can then judge me on. And one thing I will say is I'm going to do this for the best in London. And I've been telling some of the people working with me, I said this, if we do our job right, some mayor 20 years from now will take credit for our work. And I said at a meeting, I said, is everybody okay with that? And they all looked at me and said, we're okay with that. And I was like, I'm working with the right men and women because these people just want what's best for the city. So I think people feel that energy. Thankfully, we have these digital platforms where I don't have to go to a television station or a news reporter. And I think people can feel the vibes and feel the energy. So it's been amazing. I'm going to keep fighting. It's great having your support and feeling your support. And it's good to talk to somebody who kind of knows what's up. And I also appreciate the perspective of what the state says because, my mom lives in San Diego. My dad is there. And my sister's in San Francisco. And I hear things, but I don't know what it feels like to be there. And I feel bad because it's such a great country. It's a country that, it should be leading the world when it comes to freedoms. And now it's not, and it's hard to watch, and I hope we can learn from it, and I hope we can turn it around.
Well, again, Brian, this is a warning and a wake-up call to all the people in London that are listening and hopefully spread the word. You do not want to happen in the city of London what's happening in major cities here in the United States. If you're not seeing it, trust me, it's worse than anything that's being reported. It is really bad. And these are major cities. This is Seattle, Portland, New York, L.A., San Francisco. These are major cities that are getting Chicago. If you look at the murders in Chicago on a weekly basis, Brian, you can't believe it.
Yeah,
it's like a war zone. And this is a whole city, major cities. You don't want to see this happen in the streets of London.
Yeah, no, that's a good warning sign, and it's hard for people to hear, but it's important. I lived in Chicago for a couple of years. When I see the reports out of there, it's like a war zone, and this is, the United States of America. So I appreciate that stern warning, and I'm going to probably be mentioning this a few more times when I'm out there on the streets of London and just saying, look, this is a chance. Let's nip this in the bud now and forge a way forward. I keep telling people in this city that we could lead the world when it comes to recovering and showing that we're back and showing our spirit and showing our freedoms. And sometimes people look at me strange, like, that sounds like a grand idea, but I actually believe we could here. So that's that plan. I'm going to send you a copy of my book, The Manifesto, and I'll send this over to you at your address.
Great.
Again, I'll put the link on our website below. It's brianfromere.london. When do I get a copy of your book, or when's it coming out, and how are we going to be able to get that?
It should be out in June, and you'll get as many copies as you want, and then spread them around. And, also, I was supposed to be on tour in all of the UK last year. Obviously, it was postponed, but it looks like I'm going to be doing a couple of dates there in October, November, because I have some dates in Denmark, and it looks like the UK also. So I got to tell you, I love the city of London. When I first went there, I realized where New York was born from. It was born from London. An amazing city. The people were just wonderful there. And I would love to see you in control, Brian, because I know you'll do the right thing and make it even more great than it is now.
You're so right, man. I fell in love with this city. I love it so much. And I'm taking London Real over to City Hall, and we're going to keep broadcasting. So
Great.
Same set, same show, just slightly different address. Come by in October. We'll have a sit down, as you guys used to say back in the day. And we'll have that proper conversation. And look, Michael, I just want to say I really appreciate everything you do. We're seeing, a lot of people come out on YouTube that have experience like you do, back in the day with the mob and the mafia. And we can see that it's you and a couple others that are the real deal and bringing it to us with a way to frame that knowledge on how we can make our lives better. So again, I really appreciate you. I watch a lot of your videos, I got to say. I watch your Godfather 2 review. I watch all your stuff, Michael. So I'm also a fan, as well as appreciate your support. So thank you so much. And I'll send you the manifesto, and May 6th, we're going to do this. So
you got it. And I'll be plugging away. For the next 3 weeks for you, Brian. You got my word on that.
All right. Awesome stuff. Everybody, this is the man, Michael Franzese. Check him out. He's got an amazing website. He's got an amazing group of inner circle people he mentors as well. They go to the next level. His YouTube channel is off the charts. You can watch this episode on London Real, and there's great stuff from him out there. And the book's coming in June. So great stuff, Michael. I appreciate you. I'll see you here in October. All right.
All right, my man. Take care. Keep going.
Peace. All right. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
sir. Take care.